Israel's assault on the southern Gazan city of Rafah has effectively halted international aid from entering the Palestinian enclave. I spoke with the Norwegian Refugee Council spokesperson for Gaza, Shaina.
Each day, the situation is getting worse and worse, not just for the civilians, over 1 million of whom have already been displaced in the last 3 or so weeks, but also in terms of the ability to really execute any type of meaningful humanitarian response. Very little aid is getting into Gaza and to Rafah specifically, and the constraints that our teams are working under make it extremely difficult for them to go and distribute aid, the little aid that is available inside of Gaza, and to reach communities who are in need.
So is that because there's only one particular crossing that's open at the moment? Why isn't that aid getting to where it's needed?
There are a few things. First of all, first and foremost, you're right. It's about the limitations in the crossings. Very little aid is getting in through the Kerem Shalom crossing. The aid that has been trickling in the north is not able to reach southern Gaza, where the majority of people remain. But then there are also constraints in terms of being able to access the aid that's coming in through Kerem Shalom because of ongoing hostilities. And then the ability to move around Gaza and Rafah specifically because of the ongoing hostilities. It's extremely difficult for our teams to be able to coordinate and assure that they will have some degree of protection when they're working to reach communities who are in need. So a few things need to happen in order for us to be able to scale up our response. First of all, we need a surge of aid to come through those crossings, and that just simply has not been happening. And then we need to have protection for humanitarian workers. The easiest way to do this continues to be to have a negotiated ceasefire in which the parties stop fighting and allow aid agencies like the Norwegian Refugee Council to be able to actually scale up in a meaningful way.
Since the bombing of the area where there was tents and refugees, where multiple children died in a horrific way, there seems to be renewed interest from people around the world wanting to know what's going on in Rafah, reading more about Rafah, sharing more about Rafah. What's your take on this, Shaina? Is this a good thing that there's renewed interest, and how can people help right now?
Absolutely. I mean, this has been 7.5, almost 8 months of ongoing hostilities. Thousands of Palestinians have been killed, over 36,000 as of this week. And it's just a shame and horrific that so many innocent people have had to die in order to renew interest in what's going on. People need to continue pushing their leaders to demand a ceasefire. Last week, we saw the International Court of Justice issue provisional orders calling for a cessation of Israel's offensive in Rafah. That has not been enacted. We need there to be international pressure to call for the cessation of hostilities in Rafah at the least, and a ceasefire throughout all of Gaza would be much more desirable.
And Shaina, what about the situation for injured people in Rafah right now who need to be medevaced out of there immediately? Is that being facilitated?
I don't believe that there's any medevac happening outside of Gaza right now, or as of yesterday. There was only one partially functioning hospital in Rafah. The medical professionals are working under extremely difficult circumstances, trying to save lives, but there's a shortage of medicine, fuel to run hospital equipment, and even just safety for medical personnel. As we saw yesterday, two members of the Palestinian Red Crescent were killed in Rafah. And so it remains incredibly dangerous. We've seen, around 1 million people be displaced in Rafah alone in the last 3.5 weeks or so. And people are in desperate need, not just of medicine and medical care, but of food, clean water, access to adequate shelter, sanitation and hygiene facilities. And as of now, none of that is reaching people at the level that they need it to be.
A shocking situation. Shaina, thanks very much for your time this morning. We really appreciate the work you're doing there. Thank you.
Thank you.